Well, I was born in New York City,
Oh,
and the family was in Greenwich. My father worked in New York for W.J. Sloan Furniture Company, and so
and your father was named
William E.S.
William E.S.
Jr.
Jr.
Yeah,
Okay.
his father was in New York, but he lived in New York. So we lived in Greenwich and attended school there, but would come up to Old Lyme pretty much every summer for an extended stay. We were beach people.
Oh, beach people.
So we came up to Griswold Point, and there was a fairly simple house there, and I have 3 older brothers, so there were 4 of us.
4 boys
Mm.
in one family? Your
Yeah.
poor mother.
Yeah.
Noble mother.
Well, my dad was 6'4", and she was about 5'2", so
Oh.
she was a tiger. She could control us.
All 4 of you.
Yeah.
And you went back and forth.
Would drive or ride the train.
Oh.
So there was a little house up here, and so then as time went on, he took a job in Minnesota in the 50s, and so we went out there and lived for about 5 years in the St. Paul area.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so he worked with General Mills there. So, and then,
So you all moved.
well, by then my elder brothers were off to school and college and so forth.
Okay.
So, really, my next eldest and I were in Minnesota.
Okay. And they were off in
and
college.
the others were
Grown and gone.
They were in Choate and off to college and stuff. So
Okay.
that was for about 5 years, and then he came back to Greenwich again and worked with the Greenwich Country Day School,
Oh.
more or less helping them out with fundraising and that sort of thing. And so then I attended Lawrenceville School down in New Jersey, and from there went to college in Worcester, Ohio, College of Worcester.
College of Worcester.
Yeah,
And what were you studying?
it was a liberal arts
Okay.
college,
Everything.
and so I was more of a business type courses.
Okay.
So then, because this was during the 60s, that time was a little tempestuous. So the College of Worcester was a Presbyterian school,
Ah.
and it was they had we called it in loco parentis.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so they were very
Took care of you and kept you in check.
indeed. Yeah, but my roommates and I lived off campus, so we were a little less under scrutiny. But there was an occasion where we were apprehended, and some of our beer bottles were found in the trunk of the automobile after an inspection. So, but so anyway,
But they let you stay at school. They didn't kick you out of school.
there was a later occasion where other festivities were going on, so we decided to part ways.
Oh.
And so I finished up at Ohio State University.
Okay.
And from there, that was about a year to get there.
Mhm.
And then from there, I went to officer candidate school in Newport, Rhode Island, with the Navy. And
Joined the Navy.
Mhm.
That's a very good thing to do.
Very good idea.
Indeed. I'm sure your mother was happy.
Yeah. And so then I went to school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then joined.
Through the Navy. The Navy sent you to Albuquerque?
Yeah, that was a weapons school there. So then I was assigned to a ship out of San Diego, which was an aircraft carrier.
Wow.
So, and then a couple of cruises to the Gulf of Tonkin off of Vietnam. We flew planes, and it was pretty safe because at that time the Vietnamese weren't really doing much with ships out in the sea there. They were not so with riverboats, but so that was and then in December '70, I took an early out from the service and did a year of school at the University of Georgia. A couple of us went down there from the ship.
To learn engineering or to how to make
That was going to be a
bonds?
marketing
marketing.
business type thing, and then I met a young lady down there, which after about a year we decided to not finish up. You had to write a thesis, and that I was having trouble getting a topic and all the rigmarole. So I said, well, why don't we just go up to Connecticut, we'll get married, and then I'll get a job up in Connecticut, and we'll get back to normal. So we did, and I was married at the house, on the big house, as we call it.
Now, the big house is this house?
Yes,
The one that you see going straight in?
with the pillars and
Yes,
so on.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Right. So it was a small affair, and and then I started working up in Hartford with Hartford National Bank, and actually Atwood Ely helped me with that.
And Atwood Ely is a relative of yours? Of sorts?
Yeah, more distant. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Ely family and the
Yes.
Griswolds are
Together,
cousins.
yeah, okay.
So he was in the bank, so we got some interviews going, and that's where I started. And I switched around to a couple of different banks in the Hartford area. And actually, for a spell, I worked with United Bank, which had an office in Old Lyme and Essex.
Oh.
And I worked in those two banks. And then Society for Savings with another one in Hartford. And then the last was called Farmers and Mechanics in Middletown, but it then became Citizens Bank.
Okay.
And then at the conclusion of that, I became the first selectman down here in 1997.
You gave up the banking world.
Yeah, because my work with the bank was more with the smaller business customers,
Oh.
Commercial loans and commercial mortgages, that sort of thing. And so the banks were tending to have all the loans, say under $5 million, almost like fill out a personal loan application, and we'll decide that way. And what intrigued me about the smaller business clients is that often they were good technicians, but they weren't that well versed in the financial side of it. So they'd say, well, I want to buy a big machine. And you say, well, the big machine costs a lot of money, and you're making money, but maybe you ought to wait a little bit, or maybe you do need a machine to do better. You would advise them, and that was good because they often were happy that somebody would
Person
help
to
them
person. I mean,
Yeah.
you had the understanding of how to run a business.
help them with the financial
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
They were good technicians, but maybe they needed a little more help there.
Well, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And the big banks were not doing that kind of loan.
Well, they were
anymore.
looking to do bigger.
Oh.
And so the smaller business people were more or less
Kind of
relegated to second string. Yeah. So I enjoyed that, but as they kept,
Getting bigger and bigger.
yeah,
You couldn't do what you liked to do.
yeah, it
or
just
what you knew how to do.
didn't seem like a good
Fit.
destination. So I said, well, a friend of mine said, why don't you try the first selectman? And I said, well,
But you have to run for first selectman,
well,
don't you?
yes.
You had to run for it.
Yeah, but you have to be convinced to run first, so.
So you came down here,
Well,
or you've been
because
down
in 1976, I started working down this way. So
Oh,
I
okay.
was living
Okay.
in Old Lyme at the point,
Okay.
and then traveling to Hartford or Middletown and places.
Living on Griswold Point?
Mhm.
Okay, so that was good.
Yeah,
You
in
knew where you were.
'76, yeah.
Okay.
So,
And then how did these people convince you? I mean, I know you're brilliant, charming person, but it's not easy to get into the whole political
Well,
world.
I looked at it and it just seemed quite interesting
Yeah.
because no day is the same as another. And so I was on the Board of Finance for about 15 years prior to doing that.
Okay.
So because everybody comes to the Board of Finance to be funded,
Yeah.
I had a fair idea of what was involved with how the town worked. And so I figured, well, we'll give it a go. And so...
But then you have to run. You have to get
yes,
out there and talk.
There was actually a primary because
Somebody else wanted it
Jim
too.
Rice, you may know the
I
name
remember
Jim
Jim
Rice.
Rice.
Yeah, he was a state policeman.
Yes.
And actually he went up quite high in the ranks of the state police, and he became the first selectman. Merv Roberts was
Yes.
a selectman.
Oh, Merv. I remember Merv.
Yeah. And there were a whole cast of characters. And so there was a primary with Jim because we were both on the Republican side.
Hmm.
And so I was able to pull that off. And then the November election,
Who were you running against?
I think
Yeah.
it was Ray Terrell,
Maybe.
he was an optometrist, I think.
Yeah.
So, but it was, it was small town politics sort of stuff. And so that was before the town hall had been renovated. So we were all...
In that little...
you would come into the front doors and go left where the stairwell is now.
Yes.
And it was a selectman's office, and
Yeah.
you had 3 people in it. So it was kind of cramped and everything. It because of the Board of Finance path, I felt pretty comfortable on that side of it. But obviously, there's so many different things between the public works and the police and all the things that go on. So
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And that was before emails too, so
Oh,
you didn't
gosh.
have
You all had letters
all
going
that
back and
stuff.
forth.
yeah.
And how many helpers? Who was in the office with you? You're the head
There were
selectman.
2 people,
Okay. With you.
more or less somebody who was the front line with
Yeah.
whoever came in, and then there was more of an admin person, Doris Johnson
Okay.
was in there,
Mhm.
and then Michelle Hayes.
Oh,
She's
Michelle Hayes.
been there over 30 years. So
She doesn't look it.
I know.
She looks
Yeah,
exquisite.
yeah.
Michelle.
And so at one point, we said, we're going to move the office upstairs just to get a little
More space.
separation and so forth. And it wasn't long after that, the cat Marmalade became the town cat. And we had,
Yeah. We have a town cat.
yep. And actually, Carolyn Gilbert, who was a reporter for the local newspaper,
Yeah.
she did an article on all the towns that had animals, be it a dog or a cat. That was kind of cute.
And we had Marmalade.
Marmalade, yeah.
Was she a tabby cat? A beautiful ginger cat?
Kind of a tortoise shell.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And she
And,
lived.
we even used her in the one of our political flyers. We sort of made a Halloween type of motif with the cat, and we'd take the cat to the polls with us.
Oh. What
Yeah,
fun.
that was good.
And she
And
lived.
then-
She lived
Ma-
at the town hall.
Well, she stayed there,
She stayed there.
and then she developed feline diabetes. So
No.
I had to give her injections every day. So we had a serum and yeah, and then she finally she succumbed to
To the higher. She went to the
whatever.
higher
And
life.
then so we had another cat, Emma, who was more of a coon cat,
Oh,
and Emma would. So that was kind of different. I think Clinton had a cat, and of course the Griswold Inn had a cat.
oh, did they? I never. Oh, that's
Yeah.
exciting. Okay.
I think that cat was called Marmalade too. And then, so I have 2 daughters that
Yes.
lived went to the school system and went off to school and so forth. And they're actually
And they grew up here
grew up here.
with you. Okay.
Yeah. And my wife Diane, she died
Yes.
early.
Yes.
So
I first met you, Tim, years ago. It was probably 1980
that was about
88.
2002.
when we met.
Pardon?
When we met, or she died. No, I
When she
came.
died.
I came to see to your house
Oh.
through Charlotte Griswold,
Okay.
who just said, "You're young, they're young. Put us together." And
Okay.
We came to your house for a party, for a cocktail party,
Okay. Right.
and we talked about our children who were about the same age.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
I have 2 boys. You have the 2 girls.
Yeah.
Now, how are you related to Charlotte Griswold?
My great grandfather, his wife died, and he remarried. So the Matthew Griswolds are from one wife, and William Griswolds are from a different wife, second wife.
All the same
Same grandfather.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so Miss Charlotte Charlotte Griswold was your aunt or your cousin? Or your something?
Charlotte, well, she was married to Dr. Matt.
Dr. Matt, yes.
Right. So the Griswold who had, the Matthew Griswold who had the 2 wives was Matthew 7,
Okay,
and then Dr. Matt is Matthew number 9.
right.
Now, I don't think it's true in the British
Yeah.
sequence,
It's a little, yeah. we don't-
and so Dr. Matt married Charlotte
Yes.
Brevalier. Yeah. So, and then
And then
he was
they had the
involved in
2
the shopping
children.
center.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
And then you are on the WES
Yes.
Griswold side.
Right. And so my grandfather was he was the son of Griswold 7,
Okay.
Matthew
Okay.
7.
Okay.
So it's kind of convoluted.
Yeah. I mean, so Charlotte is or Matthew 8, Dr. Matt, and
He's actually Dr. Matt is 9.
9. Okay. Dr. Matt 9 and your father are half brothers.
Well,
Cousins?
I think there's one more layer above
Okay,
that, so maybe you get into the removed and all
Yeah,
this
all
kind
that
of
stuff, which we don't understand.
Yeah.
That's okay, but
Yeah.
that's good. All right. Yes, when I was young, I remember meeting you and talking about your children. And where are your girls now?
The children,
Your children.
they both live on the point,
They do?
Yeah.
Oh, what fun.
and actually Caroline and her husband have taken over the big house. It was,
This house?
yeah.
Okay.
It was in a partnership, and as as more people were added because of
Marriage.
possibly going down a generation and so forth, it just looked like it was going to get very, very cumbersome. So some people weren't really interested in Old Lyme, and others were, but those of us who lived here, of course,
Care.
cared the most,
Yeah.
I suppose. And so it was decided that rather than put people in a stressful way, if something needed to be fixed and we all have to throw in
Yeah.
some money, and somebody says, well, I really can't do that, so it worked out where Caroline and JT are now there, and they've done some renovations, so
Good.
they're there, and then Emily is close by as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So,
Wow. You're very
and their
lucky.
children are going to the school system.
Really?
Yeah.
Right here? That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, you lucky man.
Yeah.
Oh. How do you all? I read some. There's a Griswold Point Association. A Griswold Point something.
It's
Does that
a
still
very
exist?
informal thing.
Okay, good.
And we meet twice a year just to talk about various things that
Okay.
the roads and
Yeah.
the shoreline and all that sort of thing. So
Now, did you start that thing because you, as a
my brother Peter, who's the next eldest from me, various families were having discussions amongst themselves. So it just seemed that while it didn't have any real power, it could at least be a forum.
yeah?
And twice a year you could get together and
And
discuss things.
do you do that? You
Mhm.
have meetings and you all
Yep.
come together and
Yeah, we keep minutes and so forth, but it's not a binding thing. I mean,
No.
if people wanted to, one question was the Griswold Point Road,
yes,
and there was question as to, well, how are we going to manage that? So we set up a system. If it needed to be
plowed,
graded or a
fixed.
tree fell down or something, we have a formula where people would contribute small money
Yeah.
to improve things. And so that's the sort of thing. And the road going way back, we said, well, there's no real deed to it. It's just an amorphous piece of land. So we worked it out to have it become part of the abutting lots,
Oh,
so
all right.
that it was,
Everybody owns their piece.
and
in
then you
front
have
of
a
them.
right of way over it, as opposed to, well, does anybody really own this? And so if it were owned as a separate parcel, you'd say, well, who really owned it outright at some point? And you go back to the 1700s or something. And we
You
said,
couldn't figure it out.
so I think the way it's structured, if it goes to the abutters, I think someone could challenge it, but I think it just makes a heck of a lot more sense.
Yeah, it does
So,
make sense.
Then there's a right of way for the people who,
Live.
not necessarily the people, but the parcels that would be served by the road. So it just cleared up kind of a very nebulous,
Situation.
yeah.
And did you come up with that idea? Because you are a man who understands things.
Well, it sort of germinated saying we had Jane Marsh to help us.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
and on my mother's side, my mother was a Marsh too.
Oh,
Yeah, and you may have heard the name Lee Marsh.
yes, I remember Lee Marsh.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's my mother's brother, and then Elizabeth Griswold. She lived up on the hill, so-called
Yeah.
Ben Franklin Road, not too
Yeah.
far from you.
Yes, through the woods from me.
So that those three were the Marsh family, and so Jane, being a lawyer and so forth, we said, "Could you help us make this all come together?" And she did. So that was good.
Wow. The Jane Marsh may have been interviewed here. I'm not sure, but she's a remarkable woman.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, yeah. Right.
Quite something.
Yeah.
You've had a very interesting life that you have created.
Well, it's one of the things is that the mindset, I think, of people on the point is it's been a separate, independent thing since 16 something, 1640 probably. So we actually engaged the services of this wonderful gal to start it to be part of the historic preservation. So it did get Connecticut and federal designation, National Historic. So
and what
it's
is
the whole point,
The whole
from
point.
White Sand Beach over to the Black Hawk River. Wow. And that was
Big deal.
about a 3-year task. And this woman did an immense amount of research and submitted it to the state historic preservation people, and they said, "Wow, this is really remarkable because, a building or something."
Yeah.
But this was
A whole piece.
a lot of buildings and a lot of property.
acreage.
Yeah, a couple of hundred acres. Yeah. So that went through. Now it's honorific. and you can make it with more teeth if you wish. One could say, I want to have they kind of put an easement on your property so that you could get grant money to do something, but it would also, like being in a historic district, you fall under rules.
Yeah.
But if you just have the designation, it is honorific. You can modify the house. You can even tear down a house. It doesn't make that an irrevocable thing. But I think we did it not so much for the ability to try to put restrictions on the property or to get grant money to fix something.
Yeah.
We just figured it was further documenting the whole thing.
Yeah.
And everybody was for it.
Okay, that's
So
good.
that was pretty good.
Have there ever been people who said, we want to walk into it and see it?
Well, the Griswold Point Association gang, which ebbs and flows, you know, if you're part of the point, you're a member, and not everybody is active.
Right.
But so everybody signed up that had to, you know, the property owners. So, but as I say, it really doesn't restrict the sale of a property, or if you wanted to add on or subtract. It's more honorific, but we thought it would be important too. Now, if years ago there was some thought that there'd be a bridge constructed from Long Island to land in Griswold Point to hook into Route 91.
Really?
It was very theoretical.
It was a talk. It was a big talk.
You know, it's 8 miles, so it'd be like the Chesapeake Bridge.
Yeah, it'd be endless.
So it might be that this designation could help combat something like that.
Okay.
But it's been interesting because she put together this
incredible
huge amount
document.
of work.
Yeah.
And so it's been a benefit to all to see that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think pretty much the families want to, they're not of a mind to say, well, we're going to sell it. And I know my cousins made 2-acre parcels and then had a lot of open space in between. So that you wouldn't be having a 15-acre parcel, and it would be with the open space. It would be again a way to stop anything from happening. So we'll see how it goes. But, you know, one of the negatives is that in your later years, you can't downsize and take the money and make help yourself into a nursing home or something.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But you have the privilege of living out there and being there.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. But you're right. It's,
I think all of us in Old Lyme have that.
We do
same
indeed.
sort of thing in one way or another. Yeah.
We do indeed. We're awfully lucky to be here.
Right. So it's been fascinating, and Evan Griswold, my cousin, you know, he's very well versed in all the natural stuff, and it's been fascinating to watch. For instance, the point years ago at the end of the beach, it got down to a skinny spit, they call it. You know, it's just a narrow tongue of sand. And actually, Dr. Matt and Roger Griswold, they were brothers.
Okay.
They owned it. And so...
Is this the spit out beyond what I call Mrs. Griswold's house?
Yes.
Way far out?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a distinct uniform piece of sand, and Great Island was to the north. So they actually had people who would come there for the summer, and they would put a wood platform and put a tent there, and there'd be an outhouse or two, and people would live in tents, just rustically, and they could cook on either charcoal grills or something, and so they would have to collect rent to make sure that they didn't claim it was squatters' rights or something.
Where were these people? Who were these people? Just
Well, they would come by boat, and say the husband would go to work. He would go to either
and the wife would stay there in the tent.
Yeah, the wife and kids.
Stay in the tent.
They probably had boats, so they could go somewhere, maybe a car somewhere. But so anyway, over time, that whole thing just
Didn't
it
work.
was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So
Not a good
the
idea.
Nature Conservancy took it over,
Oh, okay. Oh, so
And
now they own
and they own it.
that piece.
But because of the in 92, 93, there was a very bad winter storm, and it punched a hole through that spit, and the aerial photographs would show just a channel through there. It had happened during Hurricane Carol, which we were looking at,
You were.
and I think it happened in 1815. So the thought was, well, it's going to go back, but it didn't. So
We still have the water running through it.
And actually, over time, that whole spit has become fragmented, and it has a weird curve to the north, and it's not one uniform thing. The plovers and stuff are still out there.
Oh, good. That's important.
But it's very different. And even this winter, I think there's been some change to it. So it's remarkable how things... Actually, in front of the beach, I don't know if you've ever walked down there, but there's a large rock out in the water. It looks like a big tooth.
Oh.
And I think William Chadwick had made a painting of it when it was in the bank of the land.
Oh.
And that was around the turn of the 1900s. So now the rock is out, so that much erosion has taken place. If you threw a stone, you'd have to be a good thrower to be able to hit it.
Wow.
So probably, I don't know, 30 yards or something. So the erosion along there, and Dr. Matt and Charlotte lived in the house at the end.
Yes.
Which actually that house was moved from across the street from the nearly new shop where the Fentons live.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
So-
big house. It was a pretty big house.
Yes. Yeah, it was a colonial,
Yeah.
and they've added on to it.
Yeah.
But they they jacked it up and towed it down 156 and brought it through the fields and placed it there.
Out there on that hump of land, sort of.
Just past where Jennifer is.
Yeah. Out there.
So,
Wow.
there have been some, that was, because when they were moving that house down near the big house, they went over this, we call it a dike, it's just it's a narrow thing going over where the marsh is. And the thing everybody thought is, oh my God,
it's going to go over.
it might tip over. Oh.
But they got it out there. When was this?
I think that was, I think probably the late 50s maybe.
Not until then they moved that house out there?
Yeah. Because I remember it, yeah. But this place was moved from
Yes.
up there
Yes.
near the fire,
You're right.
down.
I think they
Maple.
liked moving buildings around.
And the town hall, the old town hall was
Yeah.
moved. I mean, they were moving stuff around like chess pieces. Amazing.
Pretty amazing.
So I guess it was a lot easier than building another one. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
can you imagine trying to move a house?
yeah.
I can't.
So, but that was part of when that National Historic designation that was part of the work to document
the
the
houses that
houses.
are out there.
Yeah.
When they got out there.
Right.
Well, that's
Yeah. So it's and when there was actual farming in the fields, when they plowed different, you might find an arrowhead, and down by the cove, there were lots of shellfish in the soil. So
So,
the Indians would come down from the woods and so forth and camp out and fish and leave all their
all
shells and so forth.
detritus and stuff. Is there documentation of a certain group of Indians who lived or
I think there's,
hunted out there?
yeah, I think Rachel,
Somebody's done that.
I think they're the Mohegans and the Nahantics and so forth. And then, of course, early on, I think when the Pequots were more warlike,
Yes.
and so there was a real skirmish in Saybrook, I think, at the fort over there with at the old Saybrook Fort. But that was some of the early activity, and they call them the Indian Caves up. I guess that's off of isn't it near the Ames property up the open space off of Whippoorwill? I think you can walk in there and
see.
It's not a true cave, but it would be a shelter.
Yeah.
Kind of fascinating.
Wow.
So it's but I think everyone's committed to try to keep the point intact, and so we're so far so good.
It's not an easy thing to do, but it's such a beautiful part of the world.
Yes.
You know.
Well, they that the age of it, and there's not many like it. So yeah,
No, probably not.
try to do it. Yeah.
Try to do it.
Yeah.
Having been in office for a very long time, what, 16 years?
18 years.
18 years.
Not all consecutive,
But that's a long time.
yeah.
And you did an awful lot of interesting things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides having marmalade.
Yeah.
Are there things that not that you regret, because it's not that you wish you could have done that you didn't do, or that were?
Well, I think the townspeople like Old Lyme like it is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Every 10 years, the Planning Commission has to go through a plan of conservation and development update.
Okay.
And over the years, the thing that kept coming through is we like Old Lyme the way it is. We like the rural nature of the town. So that was pretty important to the people who were questioned about it. And the Planning Commission and zoning, they would be diligent and they wouldn't just let things happen. And, when Dr. Matt looked at Lime Street and said, the commercial center, it's an awkward little stretch.
Yeah.
It's too small to have cross streets, real cross streets like, say, Ridgefield would have and so forth. So they put it on Halls Road. So that kind of preserved Lime Street. Now, some aren't for that.
Right.
But I think most people think preserving the old houses and the street, it's worthwhile.
The street, sort of like the street at Deerfield, the street.
So, unlike East Lyme, which has taken a different route, and even to an extent Saybrook, it does help the tax rate if you have a lot of commercial.
Oh.
But, I think our taxes are about 91% derived from real estate taxes, single-family homes, and residential. And there's cars, of course, also. But I think the commercial is pretty small. We have it on Hatchet Hill. We have some strip centers in Laysville, Halls Road, down in the beach area. So there's not a lot of commercial land available, no business parks like Essex would have.
No.
So I think we pay higher home taxes than other towns that have a bigger commercial base.
Yeah.
Or take Waterford, if you have the nuclear plant. It's a ton of money.
Coming in.
So I think all the land use people and so forth have gone to try to keep it more the way it is. We have about 22% of our land in open space.
Is that?
Lyme has 50%.
Oh, okay.
But, other towns don't have that much. I would imagine Essex does, and I think Saybrook with the preserve and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think the towns around us are prized. We have the Connecticut River, lovely, and all that. So I think people are willing to keep it that way. Now, there are efforts in Hartford to say you've got to, there's a big push for affordable housing.
Yes.
And that's laudable and it's necessary, but I think we have to be careful because some of the plans, one of the thoughts right now is that if you're within a half a mile of a transportation center, you had better be planning affordable housing. So take Old Saybrook, the railroad station, that's a good example. Our only transportation is the little green buses that circulate.
Right.
Public transportation.
Right.
But we're probably within a half a mile of the railroad station. It may not be that affordable if it's stuff along the Connecticut River. But, we do owe it to people to have more affordable housing. And there's for instance, something brewing out on Hatchett's Hill Road that might be a bunch of units put up off that road that could be 30% affordable. That's one of the triggers. If you do affordable housing, if you have at least 30% meet the definition of affordable, you can get around some of the zoning rules. And you may have read in East Lyme, Oswegatchie Hills and so forth, they wanted to keep that natural. But the developer came in saying, I'm going to do affordable housing, and they could say, that zoning rule doesn't apply to me, and therefore
they can build whatever
they
they
can
want.
take over the open space. So we're trying to, we are very low on the open space count. But really, when you look at the way they do it, open space, the definition that they use, it's not that it costs relatively little to live there. It has to have a deed restriction, or it has to meet certain criteria like elderly housing and that sort of thing. So when you look at Old Lyme, you say, well, you have Ryefield and Limewood and a few other things. We have, 3 or 4 truly dedicated affordable houses. Yeah. We're behind on that. But, okay, but I don't think it's really sensible to say that every town is going to have, by their definition, 10% affordable. That's sort of the benchmark.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement, but it's a goal. But the state is really pushing on that to say, if you don't get there,
what will they do to us? What
well,
are they
can say we can force you to relax your zoning and accessory apartments and this and that and the other thing. So it's threatening to sort of this rural character stuff. We should try to do better. Yeah. But to say that we have to say like East Lyme up behind Costco, that's not affordable. But let's say you were to put something like that was all affordable. I think it's smart to mix it in with the regular houses, and when they say take a 100-unit building and 30% of them are affordable, they're not necessarily cheap looking. They look like the other ones, but you might not have a granite counter. You wouldn't have wood floors. You wouldn't have this, that, the other thing. So from the outside, it looks the same, but some of the touches inside. And really, when you talk about what is affordable, the numbers sound pretty okay. I think if it's like 30%, it might be 80% of median income and stuff. And some of them you're eligible for the affordable if like with a family of four, you're earning 85,000 or something.
Okay.
Now, when you start talking about taxes and kids going to school and all, maybe if you only have one person earning, 85,000 goes fast. But not long ago, that was a pretty good sum.
Yeah, it was.
So I think the towns, in Fairfield County, Darien and the likes of that, it boils down to what the land is worth. So you could look at a property the house might be a minor part of it. If it has on the prior interviewee, the house might be worth a couple $100,000, but the lot's worth $1 million. So that's what you're taxed on. That's the big thing. So you're not going to change that. If you say, well, we want to put an affordable house, what's the land going to cost? Forget about the building.
Well, you got land you can build on.
Yeah. Well, if the land is frightfully expensive, even if you build something using modest materials, it's still going to be hard to get that land cost down to say your unit's going to be something you can afford. Now, if you go up into the eastern part of the state, in the middle of the state, you can. So it shouldn't be one size fits all. And there should be some thought to say, if you were to go into a city and say, well, we're supposed to have 20% open space. What's your open space? Well, we don't have very much open space because we're a city.
Right.
Well, are we going to punish them because they don't have open space like they want to punish us for not having affordable? So I think there has to be some reasonable points of view here and not just say affordable,
right?
And whatever it takes, we're going to break your zoning laws down and all that. So,
who does the research to find pieces of land that are flat enough and to have these affordable housing places built on them?
Well, I guess you start with what land is available that's of a certain size. And, a lot of it is, it's already been developed or it's pretty unsuitable conditions.
Okay.
But nowadays, though, even though it's, say, rocky and ledgy, they can still work with it. So I think the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission
they're the people who do this.
Are the primary ones. They're not necessarily initiating it to say, well, here's a spot.
Yeah.
But I know that there's an effort, if somebody is thinking about giving something to open space, they might say, well, might there be, say it's 30 acres. You might say, well, would there be a place where you could designate
10 acres.
A unit or two?
Yeah.
Like David McCulloch did.
Oh.
Who
we just talked to. Whoa.
Yeah, David McCulloch. McCulloch Farm was something like 400 acres off of Whippoorwill.
Yes.
And so.
And you can go hiking back there.
Yep.
Pretty wonderful.
Well, he designated 2 lots for affordable off of Flat Rock Hill.
Okay, over that.
And the town bought 300 acres of it for open space. And so he said, well, we'll put 2 more.
Okay.
Now, toward 400 acres or something, it's still small potatoes.
Yeah,
But if people were inclined to donate open space, they could say, all right, I'll why don't we carve out that? And it's kind of onesie twosies. So the one off of Hatchet Hill might be 60 if they built 200 units up there. But, people then say, well, my goodness, is there enough water?
Yeah.
What do you do with your septic? And that's another thing, we do not, the only sewers in town at the moment are Point of Woods. And they go from Point of Woods on 156 about 12 miles over to New London Waste Treatment Facility.
Okay, that way. Okay.
There's been for years effort to sewer Old Lyme Shores, Old Colony, Sound View, Miami Beach, 4 beaches. And we're still struggling. And there was talk about, can we get a forgivable loan from the feds and all this stuff. So if that were to happen, then those areas would have sewers.
Is that a good
And
thing?
another pipe would go that
They
same
want
destination. Huh?
They want sewers, right?
Huh?
Do they want sewers?
Some do, some
Some-
don't.
Okay, see, that's another problem.
Yeah. Now, you look at, say, the Rogers Lake area.
Yes. Do they have sewers?
No.
No. Okay.
And they're doing okay, thank you very much. But if somebody came in, say the DEP, and said, because they have the cards, they could say, you are polluting. And we said, well, we don't think so. They can say, you're going to do something about that. So,
They can say to the town,
yeah,
you're going to do something
because
about
that's
that.
what happened basically in the beach area. They came in and said, and to an extent, it was true. I think, you look at Point of Woods, it's a big rocky knob.
Yeah.
And they would just have straight pipes going into the water.
Ooh.
Way back.
Yeah.
But, there are technologies you can employ, and the state of Connecticut is not necessarily accept them all. And so, you go down to beaches and say, these other beaches are probably polluting or are polluting to some extent. So we got to fix it. One of the concerns about development on Halls Road is if you were to put stores from the Old Lyme stores
Yeah.
up to the road,
Up to, yeah. Where the parking lot is now.
yeah,
Where the parking lots
Just
are.
move 'em.
Yeah. Okay.
what are you going to do with and then put 2 floors of living units, toilets, washing machines, showers, all that. Where's that going to go? Because they have a system up behind the Big Y that handles most of that shopping center, but it probably would not be sufficient for this. So they're trying to figure out under the parking lot, could something be done? But people say, well, you'd have to go out to 156, put a pipe down to New London.
Oh, gosh.
There was a time, gosh, I think this was in the 70s where Merv Roberts was very involved in it. Westbrook, Clinton, and Saybrook were going to make a sewer plant on a Connecticut River where the big chimney is,
Oh.
basically in that vicinity, because you could not have a waste treatment facility go directly into Long Island Sound. It has to go into a river.
So it would go into the Connecticut River as it comes down?
The plan was to have it go into the Connecticut River. Well, on certain occasions, we have polluted beaches because Springfield, Middletown, maybe Hartford, some of the older systems, they didn't distinguish between catch basin stormwater
Yeah.
and sewer. So all that went into one place. And when it rained like crazy, they opened the gates and then bad stuff would float down and go around the corner and we have to close the beaches. I remember it was the 3rd of July, I forget what year, probably in the early 2000 stuff. No, I think it was just after I came in. I think it was 98 or 99. Well, the sanitarian came in and said, we have to close the beaches Friday, July 3rd. I said, do you know what tomorrow
Do
is?
you understand?
The news media were all over us. The cameras were saying, what are you going to do? Because, you have hundreds of people coming to the beach.
What did you
and
do?
you're going to say closed. You had to close the beaches. They're horrendous. So, So when this proposal for the 3 towns to share a sewer plant,
Yeah.
Merv and others fought it like crazy, and it was called sewer avoidance. And the WPCA, Water Pollution Control Authority, wrote into the rules, your septic tanks have to be inspected and pumped and all that, and we want to do the right thing. And that proposal was defeated.
Did we all vote on it?
Well, I think
Or
all the
It didn't get that
opposition, their plan did not go forward with the 3 towns.
okay.
And so Saybrook started doing something itself and so forth. So that, but even the New London one, how many towns can it serve? And it's 12 miles.
It's a long way to pump.
Yeah.
And how big is the pipe?
Well, it's not huge. It's probably, I think it's probably, maybe it's that, but still.
3-foot pipe?
Well, might have more than one,
Oh, okay.
but nevertheless, it's
a lot.
and it's seasonal. So our beaches are, in the winter, that whole beach area is pretty quiet.
Yeah.
But come Memorial Day, so that's
wild.
So that's been a big thing, and so.
And it's not solved.
The Halls Road development, people are keen to say, where are you going to get the water? What are you going to do with your septage? And the other area is up in there, Rogers Lake, because we don't want Big Brother coming in and say, you got to sewer that, and then find a way to get it to New London. So it's a conundrum, but I think with the health district and stuff, we have pump out schedules and inspections and so on, and but that's why you want to keep the residential, back in the 20s and 30s. All these beaches were developers came in and made, some of them are 1/10 of an acre.
They're little tiny spaces.
Yeah. So they called them well points. So
so each one has a well?
You would just kind of poke something down on the ground, and if you could get water, okay.
You can have a well.
But you're supposed to have a 75 separation between your source of water and your septic. But when you're on a 1/10 or a quarter of an acre, take these beach areas.
You haven't got that.
You have to do a radius, and you might have 4 houses inside of that. So it does kind of say, maybe this is too compacted to make septics work. But there undoubtedly septic people working in that field, there are more modern ways of handling it than your typical 1,000-gallon tank and leaching fields and all that stuff. So it is an issue, and white sand, all of them are very compact. So it's difficult to have the septic concept work properly.
And as you say, there may be another whole system beyond septic, a more modern.
Well, I think our
I
think our DEEP is loath to adopt some of the modern technologies, and they would default back to
regular
a pipe. Having a pipe.
Having a pipe.
Sewer pipe. But I think there are some technologies that might improve what you have to make it better, short of going to a sewer. But the state seems very riveted on sewer is the answer.
Sewer is the answer. How much does sewer cost? How much would it cost to?
The projection for those 4 beaches is probably about $50 million.
50 million. And where would that come from? Would it come from Old Lyme?
Well, they give you some clean water. It's a program that 25% may be there, and some low interest money. But you might that's the sort of the stated thing, so you'd have to figure out 75% of it. When we were working with the state and the feds, they might pony up another 25%, so you might only have to come up with 50%.
50% of 50 million. 25 million.
Yeah, amongst the four.
Probably more, by the time they get to work on it all.
And so we have been saying we do not want to make it a general obligation of the town where everybody would pay. These properties were built in a very development type of way. And so for all the people in town who are on half acre, 1 acre, 3 acre, big acre lots, no problem.
Right.
Is it fair to say these people get bailed out with the rest of them? If you finance it over 2%, 20 years, you might, it might cost you $20,000 or $30,000 at the beginning, and so it'll be like a little mortgage.
Yeah.
But at least in the eyes of the state of Connecticut, your septic system would be taken care of. Now, I personally think it's wrong to make all the citizens so that they get not a free ride, but they get nearly a free ride. So that's a big rat's nest.
It's a very difficult situation.
So that's been and WPCA, I take my hat off to them because it's a very slow moving process, and
where is the WPCA based?
It's a board and commission just like the others.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So
people are appointed to this board?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the selectmen appoint people to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And if there was to be a bigger Point of Woods is one little entity. It's 400 houses, but it's one entity. But if you had those 4 entities, it might be that you'd have to have billing and staffing and stuff that would be paid for by the users, because you have your initial cost and then you have your ongoing cost.
To send it.
Yeah,
you got to build it, but then
they would pay for their use of the system, just like a water system.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, I guess we're extending.
We're having so much fun, we don't want to stop. But Tim, it's been fascinating and fun and interesting to talk to you.
There's so many little things like that just ballooned, and it's fascinating. And some of them are solved quickly, and others take forever, and you're not going to make everybody happy. So
no, but I think you did make a great many people happy.
Well,
I think you worked very hard, and it's pretty amazing. A true life of service.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't. So
indeed not, and we're glad that you did. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Very good.